breach attack simulation, Caldera, Cisco Secure Endpoint, Powershell, Mimikatz. We're going to detect, and then we're going to automatically isolate the threat. Let's get started. All right, we're in audit mode. We're checking out Secure Client here from Cisco. We've got Caldera up and running. We've got an agent running on that asset for Caldera. And let's come in here and check out Mimikatz. What do we got? These are all built-in abilities within Caldera. We can scroll down. There's tons of options here with Mimikatz. So we've got some options moving forward in our testing. Let's go ahead and check out adversaries. Again, we can select a profile here. They're all built into the platform itself. We're just going to go to an operations and create an operation here specifically for Mimikatz. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll give this operation a name. Call it Mimikatz. Test 1. Here we can pick an adversary. We're not going to do that. And here we're going to do red team group. That's just where the agent is associated to. So you can be selective. We're not going to do any obfuscation, and we're going to start it automatically. There's some settings here we can tweak. We don't need to do that for this particular test. All right, let's go ahead. Tactics and techniques. We can pick and select a bunch of these here as well if we're trying to align to MITRE specifically. Or we can come in here and just search for Mimikatz. And you can see there's Active Directory, DC Shadow. You've got invoked WMI past the hash. And PowerCats staged. And then PowerShell Mimikatz. Let's go ahead and try that one here. And here's the actual command line argument that we're going to pass or script that we're going to leverage. The moment we added this, it's already started. So we can see where we've updated policy. We're set in audit. So let's go ahead and reload. And right away, we see one trigger here. It says command reference remote red team tools. And let's just reload this here again. And now we see a couple more here. From medium, high to critical. The first one, PowerShell exploitation frameworks, commandlets. And you can see we've got a couple of tactics and techniques that were triggered. We can also see the observed activity that took place for that particular test. So we can see we've detected command interpreter, steal or forge Kerberos tickets. We know we've got command and control and resource development for the second event around the remote red team tooling. We can also look at the other one where it says raw GitHub argument, and it's talking a little bit about what that means to us and the tactics and techniques that were actually leveraged here. And then PowerShell download string. Again, we've got execution as the tactic that's being leveraged. And finally, Mimikatz dump credentials. We've got tactic of credential access and a little description about what that is. And also the technique that was actually leveraged. And you can see two of them here. So pretty cool. We were able to audit and detect that. That's great. So what I'm going to do now is we've got the capability of automated actions. And so in most cases, you obviously want to prevent this activity from happening in the first place. But if you did get a critical alert in our case, because we're going to set this to critical, and we may assign it to one or more groups, we're going to actually be very prescriptive here and assign it to our protect-based policy that we're leveraging on our test machines. And we're going to make this active. And what this is going to do is if it does see a critical alert on that particular asset, it's going to isolate it. And we can do a forensic snapshot of the asset as well. But anyways, we'll keep it pretty simple here and we'll just isolate the asset. So I'm going to go ahead and ping 8.8.8.8 and we're going to continue to ping here. And this is allowed to take place. So we shouldn't see any disruption here whatsoever. We'll go ahead back into computers. We'll go to Windows and we'll drop down our host. And we're going to move that into the protect policy. Remember, currently it's in audit. So we want to make sure that we're in protect and we'll be able to trigger that isolation again if we are able to detect that particular event. So let's go ahead and hit update. And there we go. We're full protect policy. We're good to go. Don't have to worry about Windows turning on here because it actually gets disabled. And let's go ahead and we'll just rerun this. We'll actually add it back in here as an additional link. So Mimikatz, And then we'll scroll down to the exact same one that we just leveraged, PowerShell, Mimikatz. And you can see we found much more tactics and techniques in this particular test was trying to highlight. Okay, now we can see that we've ran it, and if you quickly see here, the isolation is actually showing as isolated. So the machine is actually isolated already. That's how quick it takes place. Isolation started, but we already saw the refresh on the screen take place. And 8.8.8 is allowed. I'm going to talk about why that's allowed in a second. But let's go ping 1.1.1, and you can see that we have failure. And that's because we are isolated. If we ping 192.168.255.1, which happens to be the gateway, we can see we can no longer communicate with it. So we are isolated, or at least restricted. The 8.8.8.8 is an allowed access list that we have enabled. There's certain things that you may want to allow even when in isolation. You still want to obviously manage the asset. That's one. But there might be other functions within your organization that you might want to allow the asset to continue to have access to and just restrict it from causing additional harm. So let's go ahead and jump into the policy itself. And if we go to advanced settings, what I want to show you here is endpoint isolation. You can see that isolation IP allow list. If we jump back up and we look at the allow lists themselves, you can see the allow isolation, misspelling there, 8.8.8.8. That's why it's allowed to still ping that address itself. All right, let's jump back and let's start that ping again to 1.1.1. We know that we're not allowed to ping that in isolated mode, but let's assume that we've resolved the issue. We now know there's no risk to this particular asset. Let's stop the isolation, maybe give a comment here, resolve the issue, and maybe some details around it wouldn't hurt, and go ahead and hit stop. And you can see here it's stopping isolation. If we jump back into the endpoint, we can wait, or we can come and force an update here to trigger it a little bit faster, not isolated, and you can see very quickly that ping is restored. I had full access as I did before.